Hello, everybody, and welcome to your master's class in real estate. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Of course, I appreciate Zach encouraging me to film this class so that people can then tune in later to a better recording. But for me, being a thespian, it's important to do it on stage in front of people, to have that interaction. So I appreciate all two of you showing up today. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, there are thousands of people here. You just can't see it. So today we're going to jump into DISC, Myers-Briggs, and you. This is about realizing your fullest self and applying it to your business. Here are some of the sources and resources so that you can jump into this later. And of course, these slides are available for you if you want access to them. All of these presentations are being saved so that people can have access. If you want to present them in the future, Marcella, or if you just want access to the information so that you don't feel like you have to be taking such rigorous notes. IDR Labs is a great resource we'll talk about here in a little while. Willow Tree Training was another great resource for building this presentation. 16personalities.org is the Myers-Briggs platform that I recommend. Tony Robbins has the free DISC profile. Project Life Mastery was another resource that I utilized while building this class. And then Minimum Effort Media, Like Stories of Old, the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And then here's a selfless plug, Zen Business by David Serpa. Go out and get that right now. And then contact me if you want your presentation, if you are thinking about, if you're EXP curious and you just want to dabble your toe in and see if it's a fit for you. Okay, so what is the DISC? We'll get into this more here in a minute. This is more where you fit into a team. This is to establish whether or not your personality is dominance, influence-based, steadiness, or conscientious, which we'll get into here in a little while. And but first, Myers-Briggs is how you're designed and gives you access to your personal blueprint, which is a great tool depending on how you want to utilize it. And of course, it gives you an opportunity to figure out what kind of Disney princess you are. I am Esmeralda. I built 12 slides about why I'm Esmeralda and why she's the most underrated Disney princess of all time with this BuzzFeed article. Slide by slide, side by side on slide by slide. But I decided, hey, listen, it's not all about me and Esmeralda. The ego was talking. And then we're going to jump into King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. These are the archetypes of the king / queen, warrior, magician, lover, and their bipolar shadow archetypes. We're going to dive into their applications into business and a little bit more deeply into some of those resources. And then we're going to, of course, some things to have in mind as we're going forward. This class today is about the full you. Not just how you fit in, not just who you are, but really diving deeply into becoming a fully aware and conscious human being that is not going to be the victim of your programming or the victim of your circumstances. And of course, as we're going into these personality profiles, somebody might say, oh, well, I'm this or I'm that. Well, we're going to talk about dominant traits as we're going through this. And then honoring your design in that platform, developing your person, and then finally, this is not the answer in all forms to everything. This is just a direction for which you can travel in if you're influenced. And then I was like, you'll be a whole person, guaranteed. That, of course, is not going to happen in an hour and 15 minutes. I'm not your missing piece. I'm nobody's piece. I am my own piece. And even if I was somebody's piece, I don't think I'd be yours. Shel Silverstein. Zach is not amused. So get to the beef. Get to the meat. Here we go. So DISC. What is DISC? DISC is a snapshot into a personality profile. It is like, hey, put it in this bin or that bin. A lot of companies will ask you to take a DISC test to figure out how you're going to fit in and whether or not you're a proper fit for where you're being hired. It is a basic snapshot. And finally, like I said, is for hiring or building a team. So jumping in, my DISC profile is a 99D, an 87I, I think like a 50 something or whatnot S, and then my C doesn't exist. I think I'm like a negative 15. But dominance, this is for people who are high driving. They're super entrepreneurs, hyper entrepreneurs. They don't like small talk, like Zach. Zach's like, cut to the beef. Don't give me vegetables. They're people who are risk oriented. They take charge. They are confrontational. They are comfortable in confrontation. And in fact, a lot of high D people like myself, and especially people that are not completely fully developed, thrive on confrontation. They like control over their atmosphere, over their schedule, over their day. Some of the negative parts to high D personalities, and of course, I'm a high D. I think Zach's actually an 87. And then
I don't remember.
I, and then a D?
No,
You're an ID.
I'm like 99 I.
Yeah. And then they're impatient. They can be arrogant, which is total bullcrap. And they can be insensitive. You know, and so how often do I, like, people are giving me this offer, I'm like, cut to the point. Cut to the point. They make great listing agents because they like to have, they're great closers. They're great team leads when they're more fully developed. And of course, that's the best team lead personality profile as far as I'm concerned. And they're also great owners. So they're really great at putting themselves into situations where they own a business that is yielding fruit, and they're a lot of times absent from, and that is the king archetype in a lot of ways in which we'll talk about as we get into king, warrior, magician, lover. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the I personality. They are fun. This is moms. This is Zach. They're fun. They're confident. They're outgoing, optimistic. They're people. They don't understand why people might not be people. Right, Zach? Mm-hmm. They thrive on recognition. They are great communicators, or at least they just love to communicate. Some of the negatives are they just love to communicate. No, I'm just kidding. Some of the negatives are they can be emotional. They are poor with time management. They tend to be unorganized, and they tend to seek outward validation. So a great way to keep an eye on your team is to give them little awards, little trophies, little recognition, et cetera, and so forth, because they really do thrive on that. I think Pat said a man will do a lot for a shiny piece of ribbon. They make great buyer's agents. And in fact, they make great solo agents as well. I should have said that. Fantastic solo agents, but they make great buyer's agents on the team. S is for steadiness. These people are calm. This is my wife. They are loyal. They are team oriented. They thrive on harmony. And in fact, the quickest way to lose an S personality is to have a disharmonious environment. Something that is discord, I guess is the right way to put that. They're very helpful. They thrive in stability, and they like to create stability for other people. They tend to be very private. They're the people that if you call on them, hey, share, they're like, ooh, not me, not right now. Some of their issues are they tend to lack boundaries. So they will dump themselves more fully into other people's success versus their own. They are such a team player that they're the people that are like, you know what? Some of my downfalls are that I probably give too much. And people are like, oh, that's a great answer that somebody else might give. But S's genuinely mean that. They tend to give a lot to the companies, the people around them, their family units. So when you look at an S as a team lead, this is something that can thrive as a transaction coordinator, as an operations manager, as a broker. They tend to be great brokers because they're already on that left side of the brain in some ways, in that they want that steady, they want that logic. But as we all know, brokers tend to be broke. So, you know, that's why a lot of D's aren't getting their broker's license these days. Okay, C personalities. C's are very analytical. That is really what they lead with. They are task-oriented people. They like to get one thing done and then move to another thing. They really thrive on closure. They're very logical people. They tend to enjoy numbers or data. So people get lost when people, using people very generally, but when they say, oh, they like people, or they only like data, they like numbers. Well, some C-type personalities will thrive in therapy, as therapists, as team leads, because of the fact that they're so organized, but they start looking at people as things that can be organized, things that can be systematized. And so they can also make great team leads if they are able to develop that I, right? If you're all egghead and not enough cells, it's difficult. If you're 2 cells and not enough egghead, you can really have a lot of difficulty in this business. All right, should I call people eggheads? Probably not. They tend to be very curious. They like to be prepared. They like to know what's going to happen and when it is going to happen. They're very organized people. They tend to be, and here are some of the negatives. They tend to be perfectionists. And this is why they don't make great agents, in my opinion. Perfectionism leads to procrastination, which leads to paralysis. They tend to be very analytical. And again, this is a negative because analysis leads to paralysis. And they are numbers and facts driven. They can be caught up in that analysis paralysis stage of, this is how many agents fell. I need to get this together before I go out. I need to have the perfect systems before I go out, the perfect website. I need to be knowledgeable and know what I'm talking about before I am put into a situation where I have to talk about real estate. And then next thing you know, maybe you have to get a real job. So they tend to thrive in marketing roles, lead generation, administrative, and logistic roles. Now, jumping forward, because DISC is the most boring, and now we're jumping into Myers-Briggs profiles. This is really your personal blueprint for how to operate, how you already operate. 16 personalities is a great resource. This is more about self-understanding than it is about self-improvement. Now, self-improvement is a great reason to jump into Myers-Briggs, but this is more about clarity, seeing where you're at currently, seeing where you do fit in well into systems so that you're not a bird trying to swim or a fish trying to fly. These are tools that can be used for development, finding your strengths and your weaknesses, you fit into a system. So I strongly suggest that you plug your results into YouTube and look up IDR Labs. So what you'll get is an E or an I, an S or an N, a T or an F, or a J, and a J or a P. And those 4 letters put together are one of the 16 different personality profiles. So if you wanted to take a note so that you kind of get an idea for where you're at, this is kind of an informal way to do it. If you want to wait until later and then really dive into this, it's a great tool to utilize. So just jumping into the small, minute details of what comprises these 16 different personality profiles, because you can really dive in pretty deeply. The first is E versus I, or extrovert versus introvert. And an extrovert is somebody who is more consumed with the outside world. Versus somebody who is introverted and is consumed with the inside world. What is going on in here? Extroverts like to be a part of a collaborative process, whether they are building something collaboratively or whether they are sounding out their own process so that they can more clearly figure out how they think. And then an introvert will more gravitate towards figuring out the solution on their own. Their creative process is more one of solitude versus one of collaboration. Now, really, the extrovert versus introvert conversation is more one that is around where you get your energy. Do you get your energy from other people? Or do you get your energy from recharging and being alone? And so that's really what that is. So an extrovert likes to talk about things and then think them through. An introvert likes to think things through and then talk about them. So some extroverts would really thrive with thinking about saying 1/3 of it. And in fact, that's where I struggle as well. As an ENTP, the most introverted of all of the extroverted types, I like to do a lot of research. I like to do a lot of time by myself, but ultimately I will go out in the world to talk to people, to collaborate, to be part of a tribal community, and then move towards something as a group unit. Now, extroverts tend to know a lot of people, whereas introverts may have fewer friends, but those are closer relationships. Extroverts have a wide variety of interest. They're always doing something. They like dancing and music and, going out and just figuring out how to talk better in front of more people. You'll find an introvert that is trying to step out of their comfort zone at something like Toastmasters. But you'll also find a lot of people that really just love to talk, right, Zach? And so it's really about having a multifaceted interest versus having more intense interest, more focused interest on a smaller amount of things. A jack of all trades versus being a master of a few trades. Extroverts tend to have a wide variety of interests. We already went into that. Extroverts are energized about being around other people. They thrive off of having little conversations about the weather, what somebody's doing in their life, where they're going next, how their family is, right? Introverts are energized by quiet time alone, which is why a lot of introverted people, when Zach teaches the second breakdown of the deal, which was earlier in this master series, he talks a lot about, hey, what's going on? Oh, you've got a practice coming up. Okay, and then he puts it in, and then next time he follows up with them about how soccer practice went, or, oh, I'm not going to call on Thursday because I know that that's soccer practice day. Whereas I'm trying to get off the phone immediately, as quickly as possible. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is sensing versus intuition. Now, this is S versus N. It's not S versus I, because I is, of course, introvert in the first block. Sensors like to process information in a linear way. They also like to go through life in a linear way. They like to say, this is the next step. This is the step that I'm going to go to next, because that's the logical thing to do. Versus people who are intuitive are nonlinear in their processes of information. And they're also nonlinear in the way that they go through life. They might seem more scatterbrained. They might have a workplace that looks a little bit more chaotic, but to them, it's all organized. And if you move something, it's off. If you're an S person, you're like, no, this is my workspace. I have to be a little bit more organized, and it helps me function. And an unorganized workspace is an unorganized mind, right? And then sensors like to follow authorities where someone has gone before. They like to go to the conference to figure out the tools to success. They like to read the books. They like to follow the doctrines. Versus the intuitive people who are more about the sixth sense. You're like, hey, why are you doing what you're doing? Well, I'm just following my gut. You know what I mean? And so that's really the difference. And the two can drive each other nuts, but it's really great to have complementing energies in a business, in a family, in my opinion, because if you have kids, you're going to have them anyway, so that you really understand how all of these different tools are good. It's not good to be one thing and bad to be another thing. It just is. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about Myers-Briggs. I am an ENTP. My wife is an ISFJ. We are 100% opposite of one another, which is great. Okay, so sensors are detail-oriented. Intuitive people are big picture people. Sensors are practical about reality, where intuitive people, they're imaginative and creative. To them, reality is something that is fluid. Sensors focus on past experience and real world examples versus intuitive people that focus on metaphors and patterns. Sensors like repetition and feedback versus intuitive people who like to focus on connection between ideas. You'll often see a sensor like pursuing that recognition, that certification, that degree, that, next to their name. So that, okay, listen, now I'm legit. If they don't have it next to their name, they might feel invalid versus an intuitive person who will just say, I'm born to do this, and they'll feel it. I'm born to do this. Now, here's a little test to figure out if you are a sensing person or an intuitive person. So can you guys tell me some things about this picture right here? It only works with feedback, so just take your time.
He's
He's very flirtatious, very good.
And she's very coy.
She's very coy. What were you going to say, Jim?
I said he's whispering in her ear or something.
He's whispering in her ear. Okay. What else? I want something from everybody.
She looks like she doesn't want to be perceived.
What was that?
She's pulling back a little bit.
She's pulling back a little bit.
She looks like she doesn't want to be perceived as engaging with them.
She looks so she doesn't want to be perceived as engaging.
I think there's some gossip going on, some cheese man.
Gossip. Zach.
I mean, I don't see her pulling away because she's leaning her head towards
Yeah.
him. And she also, her body isn't shifted away. But, to me, it's two people just talking.
Okay, you ready? So if you're a sensing person, you went, hey, there are two people talking, right? Or it's a man with a mustache. That's a woman. Right? It's more, they're spinning white wool. She's got a pink dress on. There's a cat down there in the corner, right? More like this is the logical, this is what is going on actually. I don't know what you think all is going on, but this is what is actually going on. You're all reading into it. That's a man, he's got a mustache. That's a woman, she's got a pink dress on. She's spinning white wool and there's a cat on the ground. I don't know what you're all talking about.
Have you ever seen
And
a
she
woman
does
with a
it.
mustache?
Yes.
Yes. Raised by a woman with a mustache. There's so much masculinity in my family. The women are flexing out their mustaches. Okay, versus the second one, if you are an intuitive, you're listening, hey, this guy's looking for a date. Maybe they're gossiping, right? She's not into him, right? And it was great because it was moms who gave the very perception-based, or intuitive-based, right? Oh, there's something going on, right? And very much the same way, so was Maricela. Jim's first observation was they're having a conversation. I think you said that he's whispering there. Zach was like, no, you guys are all freaking, there's just not that much going on. They're just talking. We don't even see the whole picture. There might be a concert right there, and they're just trying to be respectful. All right. So next we're going to go into thinking versus feeling. Now, this has to do with how you make your decisions. So a sensor versus an intuitive, that's how you process information. Whereas a thinker versus a feeler is how you make a decision. Ultimately, are you making that decision with your brain or are you making that decision with your heart? Okay, and a lot of people think they're thinkers that are feelers, and a lot of people think that they're a feeler and they're a thinker. And there really is not a whole lot of gender bias in this, which is very interesting as well when you're going through the Myers-Briggs catalog and when you're going through statistics. This is a pretty even break, okay? So thinking versus feeling, this is how you make your decisions. A thinker will say, I am a fair person because everyone gets treated the same. A feeling person will say, oh, well, I'm a fair person because I'm subjective, right? I understand that there's a different case in every situation. There's a different heart. There's a different person, right? A thinker will say, well, hey, the same standards, that's what makes a team uniform. Whereas a feeler will say, no, hey, listen, different people is what makes a team. Having, different people, different backgrounds, different goals, that's what a team is. A thinker will want to see their best a lot of times from other people, or like the uniform best. Hey, listen, this is the average. Everybody should at least be with the average. And if you're not with the average, you might want to get a different job. You know what I mean? A feeler is like, hey, what's your personal best? What do you need? Are you okay? So it really is a difference between logic versus feelings. But that being said, of course, having that heart center while also utilizing your brain and having your heart center, all of these things creates a full human being, right? Okay. Now, a thinker tends to look at things very logical and analytical, whereas a feeler tends to look at things, they're very kind and empathetic. A thinker has objective principles, whereas a feeler has subjective inner values. A thinker's like, okay, this is how I feel about it, and this is why I feel about it like that. So my feelings are justified intellectually. Right? Whereas a feeler will come about and they'll look at the numbers and they'll say, ooh, well, those numbers are not really accounting for something. You know what I mean? Like, what is the human element? What is missing from these statistics, right? I bet, what is the sample, right? So what they'll do is they'll approach the world, of course, from a feeling base and then justify their logic through their heart lens, right? Well, I think this way because I feel this way. And because I feel this way, I know it's true, right? Okay. So, and neither one of those things are bad. So a thinker thinks in things of true and false. Did it happen or did it not happen? A feeler looks in things as good and bad. And for the most part, feelers like to look at things as good, right? And they're going to justify why people are good. Because most thinkers, and I think that this would be an interesting thing to look at, tend to be a little bit more, whereas the feelers are like, I don't know. Is anybody really bad in their heart? Just to know. Okay. And the thinkers know because a lot of them are bad in their hearts, and other people are pretty bad in their hearts. All right, so judging versus perceiving, and this is the last part of the Myers-Briggs before we jump into King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Judging is, and perceiving is how you live. This is, what your life is like on a day-to-day basis. And this is something that was actually added in after the fact with Myers-Briggs. And a lot of this psychology comes from Carl Jung. And we're going to jump into that, not so much this time. And we're not going to jump into too much of the history because, people's eyes will gloss over and then I'll get the yawns. Okay, so judgers like to have a decisive plan. This is what we're going to do. We'll make adjustments if we need to. This is our backup plan. Whereas a perceiver likes to go, hey, this is my experience. Let's just go with the flow. Okay? So, judger, this is the world's experience. You might be the anomaly. Let's look at the science. Let's look at the data. Hey, listen, this is our, let's just kind of figure it out as we go. Again, neither one is wrong. A judger thrives on closure. So the J doesn't have to do with like looking at a person and being judgmental. That's not what the J is. Okay, this has to do with how you live. They'd like to have that closure. Bam, the gavel. It is done. Now I can move on to something new. Perceivers like to constantly be gathering information. I, of course, am a perceiver, which is why it doesn't matter how early I start working on this presentation. I'm still going to be up till 2:30 in the morning, and then up again at 6:30 in the morning, and then till the last minute trying to get the details the way that I want it, because I don't want the closure. And we'll get into that here in a moment. J's like the control. They like to have that perfect daily schedule. This is what I'm going to do today. I know this is what I'm going to do today because that's what it says in my schedule. Okay. Versus perceivers who are adaptable. Okay. Listen, I don't want a freaking schedule. Are you kidding me? Are you bogged down with the day before I live it? Okay. Different things, different people. Okay. And then judgers like to work, then play. They cannot have a good time until they know that their work is done, right? So, sorry, my hips are getting very tight. So they like to work and then play. Whereas a perceiver likes to work and play. You know what? I'm going to take a break and play some video games. Or hey, listen, you know what? why can't we have fun while we're doing this? You know what I mean? So like there is a completely different separation in the way that these people process information. Delayed reward versus instant reward, instant gratification. Delayed gratification tends to be the judgers. Instant gratification tends to be the perceivers. I can have my cake and eat it too. You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's not realistic. I can go to the store and get more cake. More cake. So like perceiver, judger. Yeah, but do you have the money for more cake? And so like it just, having that and then understanding that the way that you live, looking at your numbers, looking at the data, and then like being realistic with yourself so that then you have your thinker consulting your feeler. You have your judger consulting with your perceiver. You know what I mean? And then that way you know how you're wired naturally, but you don't become a victim to your programming. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So again, the judger craves closure. This is done. Okay. A lot of, relationships, okay, and with the judger are in with finality. The hammer, the gavel. We are in a relationship or we are enemies, or we are in a relationship or we are done, right? The J. So there's versus, you know what? A lot of exes are friends. You know what I mean? And it's just a different way of doing things. Neither one is wrong. So the judger, the gavel is done. I'm done with my daily tasks. I'm done with my weekly tasks. I can accomplish my monthly tasks. My vision board actually has items of it that are crossed off because I live in the freaking real world. That is the J. The perceiver is like, hey, listen, it's all open-ended. What is success? You know what I mean? Like, we'll get there eventually. Like, their to-do list is, a lot of them growing longer, perpetually growing longer, because they don't like to get things done. And that's part of living in the clouds. Living in the clouds is something that P's tend to be versus the J's, which are like, this is the real world. This is the analytical and appropriate way to look at it. And in fact, you're wrong. You know what I mean? Okay, so judgers like to have a sense of control, and they thrive when they have a sense of control. They don't like things to be out of control. Okay, in a relationship, in a team environment, in a working environment, in general, it's out of control. Everybody, freaking hang on. A perceiver is flexible and spontaneous. If you give them daily tasks, they're like, "Ooh, I'm going to do everything but those daily tasks." Okay, I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I'll probably get to my task when I want to, when I'm inspired to. Okay, inspired to work, duties and responsibilities, right? Okay, judger, make a plan, follow it through. Well, I know that I'm going to do it. My word is sacred. Perceiver, yeah, my word is impeccable. We might be a judger. We're finding ourselves here today. Or perceiver, I want to gather as much information as possible. I want to go with the flow. Okay? A decision never really needs to be completely made. Okay? I withhold the right to change my mind. Okay? I will be affected by new information, right? Jay, more rigid. No, this is my doctrine. And again, Jays tend to make everything a little bit more religious. It's like, this is my doctrine. You're wrong. And it says in the good book, right? Perceivers, I don't know, which good book? Good book is relative. Okay, judgers, they like to work before playing. Again, we talked about this. Perceivers play and work at the same time. Okay, now you can figure out which Marvel character you are. You can figure out which Star Wars character you are and which Disney princess you are. Freaking applause. Thank you. You're welcome. Hiya, hiya, hiya. And now we could officially jump into that deeper wisdom, the archetypes. And of course, these archetypes, there are male-female archetypes, and we're going to honor that too. And I'm going to give you some resources for further reading. But the archetypes that we're going to primarily focus on visually are going to be male. And the reading that I've done has been male. And understanding that these archetypes are there for a reason. We are like, oh no, there is not a king and there's not a warrior, a magician, or a lover. Those are just, social constraints. So no, listen, that is social programming. And that's really what Jung got into. What is groupthink? What is our group programming? If you live in a Christian society and you've been living in a Christian society, you will be influenced by Christianity regardless of whether or not you are a Christian, right? And so those sort of things. The archetypes throughout history of, again, burning the mother creator, the mother wisdom, focusing on the patriarchy of the male-centered family, the male-centered kingdom, the male-centered, workplace, and then understanding that does have a real effect in our bipolar shadows, in our group programming on a world level when you have as much war as we've had, and the destruction and the fallout that comes from that. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here. The literature. On your left is King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Excellent book. My book looks like somebody threw it in a pool. It looks destroyed. It's just an absolutely beautiful book. Fellow warrior recommended that to me, and just absolutely beautiful book. Here are some resources for the women. The Hero Within by Carol Pearson, and Goddesses in Every Woman by Jean Shinoda Bolin. And if I have not read those two, full disclosure, I have read King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. At this moment, this is one of those things where hitting me up for the presentation is going to be great for everybody, because being able to read all these little things are huge. But I'm going to blow this up for a moment just so that you see it. This is the magician, the warrior, the king, the lover, and their shadow archetypes. And we're going to get into all this later. But there is a passive and an active in each one. And in fact, we're going to stay on this right here. This is each character archetype, their bipolar shadow, both active and passive, and then the child version of each one of these, right? So the child version of the king is the divine child. The child version of the warrior is the hero. The child version of the magician is the precocious child. The child version of the lover is the Oedipal child. And all of these have shadow archetypes. We're not going to get into the shadow archetypes of the children for the sake of time, because then you also have to pay attention to the difference between the mature masculine and the immature masculine, which is a development over time, programming against certain archetypes as a society, which we'll touch on, okay? Now, getting into the warrior and his shadows. And this is pretty gender neutral. So the archetype of the warrior in his fullness is at the top. If you are not utilizing or do not have access to within yourself the full warrior energy, it is not that that warrior will then be removed from. Have you changed the cameras at all? It's not that warrior energy is going to be then removed. It's that then you're going to exhibit the bipolar shadow of your undeveloped warrior energy, which is the sadist or the masochist. Somebody who's either enjoying inflicting pain on others, or somebody who feels like they should have pain inflicted on them. They are deserving of pain. Okay? So those are two things that really affect the independent psyche, even if you do not, I'm not aware I'm a pacifist. Listen, I understand that mindset, but you have to develop your warrior in order to be a pacifist. Otherwise, you're just weak. Okay? You're incapable of protecting yourself. So getting into the full warrior energy. Now, this is the developed warrior. This is not the weak warrior, which we're going to get into here in a moment. This is the warrior operating in her fullness. The warrior energy exemplifies I want. This is what I want. Okay, in his full. I want in his shadow. Right? I want because we need. Okay, versus I want because I need. You know what I mean? And so you really understand that the shadow being the tyrant, the weakling. You know, those are what ends up being exhibited if you do not fully craft your warrior energy. So here's some of the positive attributes of being a warrior. They are people who operate in action, strength, integrity. They tend to have a code of ethics. They operate with a sense of honor. Their word is sacred. We talked about that earlier quite a bit, right? You do what you say you are going to do. That's part of the samurai, which we talk about a lot in Zen Business. Your word is sacred. It is an oath. It is as good as a bond. If I say that I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Okay? The grind, the hustle. Like, you could already hear some of the business attributes coming out of the warrior, because in a lot of us, that's the energy that we come into business with, is the warrior energy. And a lot of us never fully develop out of that. And there are downsides of that, which we're going to get into. They like to grind. They like to hustle. In fact, they love to hustle so much, they're in the trenches all the time. So they have the inability to sort of level up and look down at it from above, unless they develop that king energy, which we're going to get to here in a little while. They love to be challenged. If you are not challenging yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, the warrior gets bored. They are a finisher of task. Is it done or is it not done? If the mission is critical, what are we doing to get there? Right? What are we going to do to get it done? They are a closer. Right? Coffee is for closers. They crave growth. And in fact, that's why the warrior energy develops naturally into that king energy. They are courageous naturally. They are focused. They are willing to sacrifice not only themselves, but they're willing to sacrifice their family. They're willing to sacrifice whatever needs to be sacrificed for whatever the code is, for whatever it is that they have decided must be accomplished. And so that's why, again, what is that code? What are they operating by? A warrior without a code tends to get lost. Okay. They have great willpower. And then they have that little something that is hard to quantify, which is grit. They need to operate in a creative atmosphere, or they become destructive. They need to have a reason. That reason needs to be something solid. A god, a people, being a part of a tribe, a sect, a religion, a nation, having a task that is worthy. They are at one with their fragility and their death, right? They understand that death is rebirth. They embrace that sort of death. At least in the warrior energy, it is till Valhalla, where we're going to get drunk and then continue to beat the hell out of each other, right? Till Valhalla. That's like that exemplified warrior ethos inside of a culture, right? Till Valhalla, war, right? Now, the warrior energy operating in its fullest is one that is meek. It's one that's humble. To have a sword but keep it sheathed is the biblical reference. To have the sword but keep it sheathed. To be peace-seeking, not to be out seeking war. To understand empathy and duality. The warrior understands that they are at one with all people. Ultimately, the warrior on the other side is themselves in a representation of themselves. But ultimately, the warrior has the ability to cut off the lover energy entirely in order to wreak havoc, wreak destruction, get what they need to get done throughout their day. So the person who has the warrior code will continue to operate within the warrior code when they get out into the business world. Their family will continue to be sacrificed, even though it may not necessarily need to be sacrificed in order to accomplish the task, because that is what they're used to, right? So that is the warrior code. That's what they're willing to lose. Now, there are some issues that come along with this. And of course, their willingness to sacrifice often comes with a sacrifice that is not required, right? Going up to a cross to be, nailed to a cross, you don't need to be nailed to, right? So that sort of like savior complex can run deep within a warrior ethos. Ultimately, the goal within every developed warrior is to put down the sword and come home. The war to end all wars. Now it is done. We have ended human trafficking in this valley. We have ended war. It will never happen again in this world. Et cetera and so forth. They want to put down the sword. They want to go home. To identify as a warrior is to say, I am responsible for what happens here. And I must do what I can to make this a better world for myself and others. I am capable, so I must. I'm capable, so I must. With great power comes great responsibility. The warrior, the shadow, the bipolar shadow of the warrior is the sadist, which enjoys inflicting pain, actively engage. I'm the tyrant. And they enjoy that, right? The versus the masochist, I don't want to. There's no violence, because I'm so weak and I'm not capable of violence. I deserve this. You get what I'm saying? Or because I did this, I deserve this. It's like that sort of like, it's that sort of like, get up against the door, slave. I deserve it. I deserve it. And then we talk a lot about sex in the last part of this, so just get ready. Versus the other end of it, which is like, the sadist, the one on the other end of it. Like they enjoy inflicting the pain. They enjoy giving it out. And so either way, and I'm not here to kink shame, but to each their own. But that is the shadow manifesting. And a lot of times shadows do manifest themselves sexually. But that's a whole other topic for another conversation, which we'll dabble in throughout this. Okay. Now, Pearson said that the warrior's truth is now simply one among many does not preclude commitment to ideals, people, causes, and beliefs. Warriors embrace their understandings with their whole hearts, even in a relativistic world. So there's a tendency in our world to say, morality is relative. I understand all religions. I'm of all people. I'm a world traveler. And then say all these different things, and then understand that just because you operate under certain illusions that deny your, the probability that you're going to get reality checked, does not preclude the fact that there are people out there living with that ethos. Even if they're living with that ethos in an incorrect way, that violence will do in the absence of creativity. Does that make sense? Here are the shadows of the warrior. I thought that this was incredibly interesting. I just want to read it. But the sadist gets swept away by his anger. He blindly exploits and attacks others. Deep down, he is so wounded that he can't allow intimacy. Instead, he derives a sense of satisfaction from hurting others. He brings cruelty, torture, and rape into the world. So, not developing that hero efficiently, right? Going to that dojo, the place of enlightenment, figuring out what you need to do to be capable of violence in your business, in your life, spiritually, right? Capable of that violence will make it so that you feel out of control of the violence. And so you seek bizarre ways to show that you're in control of it. Okay? Does that make sense? The masochist is afraid of hurting others. He does not want to offend, damage, or destroy. To maintain harmony at all costs, he is submissive and allows others to violate his boundaries. He does not stand up for himself and thinks of aggression as purely bad or evil. To not be capable of something leads you to be victim of it. Okay? Which is part of the shadow, part of Carl Jung's philosophy. Understanding that shadow, being capable of, doesn't mean that you are going to do it. It means that you're capable of it in the event that it needs to happen. So the positive bipolar shadow is the sadist. The negative part of the shadow is the masochist. And again, these are the negative attributes of not having a fully developed warrior. Tend to be sadistic, misogynistic, as we've seen in this culture, cruel. They have rage issues. Here are your chads, your drywall punching chads. Tend to be cruel, have rage issues, struggle with dominance because they feel dominated, or they have been dominated in their life. They feel the need to dominate their environment, dominate others. And again, it manifests in the gym. It manifests sexually by controlling somebody. It manifests as a parent being, you need to do this, right? So control versus love, right? Control versus love. And if you are not capable of love, you're only trying to control your environment. That's really the truth. And momentarily, we all switch back and forth between two. the shadow of the warrior tends to think in very black and white thinking. One of the things that Zach has heard out at the ranch, one of the things that Rudy has heard out at the ranch, I want to kill all child molesters. Yeah. And then how often do those people actually show up to make a difference, right? Versus the people that are like, listen, yeah, they got to be put in cuffs. And they need to be handled in a way that lets them know that they're not supposed to. But most people are like, they need to be prayed to. Those are these true warriors. They need to be saved. But they also need to have that reckoning, right? So the difference between the warrior in his full, I'm here to set up that appointment, or the warrior in his shadow, somebody needs to just shoot all these child molesters, is the difference between a fully developed warrior and an undeveloped warrior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, gosh, I'm killing myself. The problem with not having a fully developed warrior is that you can get yourself into trouble by perpetually slaying dragons, seeing dragons that are not even there. Oh no, I'm okay, thank you. That's a great idea though. The man who becomes obsessed with succeeding has already failed. Okay, who's that in the background? Anybody see that?
Oh, I know.
Who's that? Say hello.
Yeah, right.
Is that the Godfather? Who's that? That's Al Pacino. That's Scarface. The man who is obsessed with succeeding has already failed, right? That's where they lose themselves. This is a great little story. I'm not going to jump too much into it. This is through one of the videos that I watched. He talks about, and really, I think that this is a generation thing. The new school samurai movie, the samurai has he's dishonored by having his hair cut off. Ah! Right? That's the new Western look at the samurai. I'm dishonored, right? Versus the 7 samurai who stood up for the people around them. He realizes in this hostage situation that he needs to shave his head. So he shaves his head, goes and saves this person, and then he walks back to sort of rubbing his head because he understands that his honor is in saving that person. It's not in the physical manifestation of where we think honor lies. And I really, the resources that I put into this at the beginning, there's such beautiful content out there on these archetypes. The warrior in business. The warrior in business is a hustler. They are a grinder. They are a closer. They are a finisher. And they're great listing agents. They are great buyer's agents if you incentivize them with growth, right? The opportunity to close more deals, the opportunity to have deals that are easier to close, the opportunity to transition into listings, the opportunity to become a team lead, et cetera, and so forth. Because eventually, if the person develops their warrior energy fully, they will naturally develop into the king, which we're getting into. The warrior becomes burned out because they live life as a struggle against others and against a part of themselves that they see as unworthy. That is why it is important to continue to develop your archetypes. So we're going to jump into the king. The king in his fullness is good and strong, has plans, etc., and so forth. If you do not develop your king energy, you'll be the tyrant. Because I said so! Right? Or the weakling, right? I don't know, what do you guys think? What's mother think? Right? So like that sort of like, we've all seen the strong king and we've all seen the weak king. And we've seen the tyrant king. Like the tyrant king, Joaquin Phoenix in The Gladiator. Right? Right? The weakling king. McBee, right? And Lady McBee, right? Screw your courage to the sticking place. And he's like, I am unmanned, right? Out damn spot. Macbeth, that murder sleep. So just like, that's sort of like the weakling, falling victim to that. Or the tyrant, going back and forth between the two when you're not a fully developed king. Okay, now the full king represents the father energy. Represents I am. The fully developed king is I am. The undeveloped king is I am. Like if you have to tell somebody that you are you? I'm from the streets. Are you? He thinks thou doth protest too much. Like that whole like, I'm this, I'm that. The other tells, I've sold it. I've been in the business since 1985. I've sold 4 homes, right? So like there's that fragility in the I am, right? I am. That's why affirmations end up becoming such an important thing. You're practicing your king energy. With the king energy comes a vision for the future, the ability to create stability, bringing order to chaos. Okay, and again, bringing order to chaos is big because they're not controlling the world; they're bringing order to chaos because chaos is perpetually happening. Having a vision for the kingdom, being a leader, being mature. They're often one step removed from the battlefield, though they are willing to be there. They're great time managers. They are results oriented, and they are passionate about themselves, passionate about their people, passionate about their family. They utilize the 80-20 principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of your action. So why do the other 80? Have somebody else do the other 80, right? So that I'm practicing, maybe 20% of my things, but I'm accomplishing more. And then how do I add more to that day? Now the king will add more to the day. The magician will say, how do I get everything done? By just letting it get done, right? And we'll get into that energy here in a moment, right? Who can do this for me? This isn't something that a lot of the times when I say this in a crowded room that, they're like, oh, who couldn't do this for me? That's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing to think. You should be thinking in a business platform, who can I get to do this for me? There's somebody who's better at it than you. There's somebody who's willing to get paid. You can create a job, et cetera, and so forth. They are the link between the human and the divine. Okay, the divine energy manifested in the flesh. I am the king, and I am sent here by God. Right? That's why it's my birthright. That's sort of like, they're the link. It's important to give, as a king energy, give praise, to help people heal, to help make whole, make society whole, make people whole, and it is important to inspire. It's important to prioritize peace over violence while not losing the ability to wage violence. It is important to prioritize praise over punishment while not losing the ability to punish, and to prioritize love over control without still seeking to create order. Now, the king recognizes their own mortality, and they prepare the kingdom for life without them. This is the king in The Lion King taking Simba up to the top of the mountain and saying, the kingdom is everything that the light touches, right? Don't go into the dark, right? The kingdom, defining the kingdom, preparing the kingdom to thrive in the event that you do not live, and then understanding that with that mortality check comes the idea that that could happen at any moment, right? Which comes into the king's responsibilities of creating life, an heir to the throne. But we'll get into that, creating more of a kingdom. Now, it is important as a king to keep your ego in check. This is part of the role of the sage, the wise one, the mentor, the magician, right? Having people around you that can help you keep your ego in check. And in fact, a lot of times the kings fall victim to a tyrant, becoming a tyrant, when they have no one around them that they feel that they can trust, okay? Also understanding that you are the steward for the king energy. You are not the king. You are holding the king energy for the next king. There are two functions of the king. One is ordering. You do this. I'm going to create order because I can't do everything myself, right? And then providing fertility and blessing, having the heir to the throne, making sure that there's a harvest. The fruit is coming. The grains are coming. There is peace in the kingdom. Now, when you do not provide these things for yourself, for your family, for your people, you fall victim to the shadow archetypes, which, of course, the positive end of the bipolar spectrum is the tyrant. The negative or passive role is the weakling. Now, the shadows of the king, and again, the king energy is I am, is the tyrant. compensates for his insecurity by forcing his will onto the people he is meant to protect. Instead of being an open channel for divine creative power, love, he inflates his personality and believes himself to be almighty. He desperately holds onto his power. He perceives others as threat. New life is a threat. Other people trying to become kings are threats. That is the weak king, that is the tyrant. That is the tyrant. The weakling says, the weakling cannot find the center within them. Again, rituals. Going into a sacred space, we're going to get that in a minute. They can't find the center within them. They want to tell others what to do. He is full of distrust. He wants others to tell him what to do. Listen, king, you do this. Oh, thank God, somebody's telling me what to do. There's these Vikings outside the gate. Oh, you know what I mean? And so somebody bossed me around in private so that I could keep face. That's the weakling. He wants others to tell him what to do. He is full of distrust and fear of disloyalty. He sees himself surrounded by enemies and can easily be manipulated by others. You know, one of so there's a couple of different things that we see here in the shadows of the king, and that's in the background, right? What's not Mufasa, but what's the bad guy? Scar. He's awake at night, right? A lot of his singing and dancing is with the green flames. And, be prepared. So he's not sleeping. Macbeth does not sleep. Macbeth doth murder sleep, right? He does not sleep. That's part of the a good king can maybe stirred from sleep, may have some difficulty sleeping sometimes, but is not so bogged down by their conscience that they are not able to rest. Correct. So the king in Mufasa is in the light. Your kingdom is in the light. He is preparing the next generation. The pride is alive. It is green. It is lush. It is full of life. Under the tyrant king, under the weakling king, it is devoid of life. The king in business. This is the Godfather, Zach. The king in business. Vision for kingdom. Vision board, right? Your kingdom is measured. It's everything where the light touches, or it is in your farm. This is your farm. If you can measure it, you can market it. If you can't market it, if you can't walk it, you probably can't market it, right? At the beginning of it, right? And so it's fair, Zach. SOPs. The king has standard operating procedures. This is what is just. This is why it is just. And this is the standard for everybody, right? Goals and plans to get there. They often seek out mentors. And again, we talked about this earlier, the sage, the wise one, the spiritual mentor, but also other kings or queens of other kingdoms, right? If you're a team lead, you seek out the comfort and advice and friendship and camaraderie of other team leads, right? If you own a brokerage, a lot of times you seek out, the wisdom of other people that are there, that are doing it successfully in another place, so that you can implement it here in your kingdom. Okay. And again, they make great team leads, brokers, and owners, because the king is in touch with their other energies. Now we're going to jump into the lover and his shadows. The lover archetype in its fullness is represented up at the top. They're loved, they're loving, they're caring, they're giving, they're supportive. If they are not capable of self-love, or one of the 8 different kinds of love, they can fall victim to the bipolar shadow energy. The passive, on the positive, active side of the spectrum is the addicted lover. So I'm not getting love, so I seek out comfort, pleasure, addiction, right? So I work all the time because I don't feel loved. I need the recognition. I'm not getting seen by my wife, so I'm always watching pornography. I can't handle my own personal life, so I numb it out with sleep medication, prescription drugs, marijuana, alcohol, etc. It is the addicted lover. They can't get enough. Okay, in Hinduism, this is exemplified by the small mouth and the large stomach. It doesn't matter how much you you put into your mouth, it will never be enough to satisfy your cravings, right? Which is a type of hell. In the passive end of that is the impotent lover. Oh, I'm not capable of love. Nobody loves me, right? And that is also a destructive energy when you are not fully capable of loving yourself. You are not capable of loving. Okay. The full lover. Originally, I'd put a picture of the Notebook in the background of this, and I was like, that's not a very well-rounded love story. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put About Time in there. This is a much better love story, in my opinion. Although there's a place in the love world for the Notebook, but it's just a very immature and very shallow place. It's at the very beginning when you just want to cry and hold each other, and you're in that stage of love. Okay, so the full lover feels connection to everything, love for everything. They are caring, they are compassionate, sympathetic. They are a human being versus a human doing. They are supportive. They like to have fun for the sake of having fun. They like to play. One of the reasons why I had so many lovers on my team, so many people that or people who also wanted to have that love energy in them. When I took everyone to have a spa day, it was probably one of my top 5 favorite days in Homes team history. It was just such a fun experience because we were all celebrating that lover energy of turning off our phones, taking time for ourselves, creating that space for us. This is how you treat yourself. Excuse me, I haven't already. They are heart-centered, nurturing, alive, at one with nature, deeply sensual, sensually aware, sensitive to the world, sensitive to themselves, sensitive to those around them. It allows them, the lover, cultivating your own lover, allows you to shine. It allows other people to shine. The lover naturally, as in the lover archetype is creating life, believes in abundance. They believe in empowering others. They are capable of enjoying. So without the lover, you are not capable of enjoying fantasy, music, art, your family, vacations, things like that. Yourself, your own company. So if you need to get in touch with your own lover, that's what's going on. This gives you the ability to enjoy those things without having your lover fully developed. And again, we destroy the lover in the West. Well, really in this world. It's one of the things that we systematically destroy in our boys. We do not foster it. Not only do we not foster it, we seek out to destroy it. Now, your lover, how capable you are of loving yourself is how you treat other people. So you'll see a lot of people, I love everybody else, but they're treating themselves like crap. They're treating themselves like crap, right? In denying themselves things that they don't need to deny themselves, right? That lover energy is not fully fostered because they're not taking care of them, who they are. Square one. They understand duality, and they are capable of war. The fully focused, fully rounded lover is capable of war, but does not want it. That is the burden of the reasonable man, right? So in Braveheart, we see, I don't want war, I don't want anything to do with this, I don't want war, I don't want anything to do with this. They kill his family, or they kill his son, he loses his mind. And again, another Mel Gibson film, but The Patriot, Braveheart. I think I inversed these. Braveheart. It's not my war. I don't really want to be involved too much. They kill his wife. He kills everyone. Do you get what I'm saying? So when you mess with a lover, thinking that they're not capable of war, you risk a greater form of violence to which a weak warrior, a weak lover does not fully understand. So being capable of war, if you're not capable of love, you can't practice war in a truly destructive way if you needed to practice it in a destructive way, because you're not thinking about it from a family man's perspective. You're not thinking about it from a community's perspective. You're thinking about it from a selfish perspective. So by developing your shadow, it makes you better in the light, it makes you better in the dark. Always. Being and feeling without the pressure to perform. So, like I said, being a human being, doing the things that you need to do without feeling like who you are as a person is exemplified by the results that you were able to achieve or not able to achieve. Now, there are 8 different types of love. I really wanted to get into all of them a little bit more, but time is what it is. There's agape, which is selfless love. This is like the kind of love that a man experiences for his family, a woman experiences for her family. This is love beyond self, planting trees with which you will never enjoy the shade. There is ludus, which is playful love. This is playing together, enjoying one another, footsies under the table. This is that sort of, it's the limerence of like passion that has to be there for the spark to turn into the flame, right? Eros, and of course, to keep the flame going, you can't let the embers fall out as well. It's important to continue playing in order to maintain and eventually get to pragma, which is enduring love. Eros, which is erotic love. This is the love that is also creative. It is creating. It is, of course, sexual in nature, but it's also where a lot of potential can be unlocked. There's philautia, which is self-love, and also like a celebration of self-love. It's like going out and then finding your love for yourself and then being comfortable experiencing and living within it. Philia, which is affectionate love, a recognition of a talent that can be fostered, something that draws you to another person in a way that wants to make you help them and willing to be helped by them, in a way that does not come with the guilt that comes with a lot of superficial love. And then pragma, which can only come to, you can only achieve with endurance, enduring the things that come with the day-to-day, enduring 10 years, 20 years with somebody, 5 years with somebody. It is love that gets through. Okay. Love that endures, past the passing. If you are lacking in any one of these 8 types of love, it can manifest itself in mania or obsessive love. The addicted lover, which we talked about. Like you're just like fixated, right? There's a book called Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson. And he talks about how there are all these beautiful things, they're truths. There are all these different things, music, love, business, family, et cetera, and so forth. If you live for any one of them, those things become grotesque because you call it your own and you deny all of these other things. And then the impotent lover, incapable of self-love, incapable of loving the world, and not only I'm not capable of love, but I don't feel anything. I'm numb. That's also the impotent lover. It's not just like this baby. It's also, I don't feel anything. I feel uninspired. I feel numb. Okay, so that's also the impotent lover. The inability to perform, right? Impotent. Shadows of the lover. I love. The difference between I love you and I love you, or I love you, click. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference in those things. And what you'll find is you'll find the addict, the obsessed, I love you, claws into, or the depressed, I just love you, I don't understand why you don't love me. It's like, ugh. It's like all the like new beta heroes that are in movies. It's like, ugh. Ugh. I need to take a shower. I can't handle that kind of energy. So the addict avoids their emotions. They try to fill the emptiness inside them by consuming experiences, endless work, money, food, sex, drugs, or adrenaline kicks are his ways to reach eternal orgasm. His unconscious search for wholeness possesses and ultimately destroys him. That's part of the problem. That like perpetual finger on the pulse. It's like after a firefight, that highs. We did it! Everyone's alive. We got him, right? It's like it's very life affirming. Death is very life affirming. But when something around you is destroyed, it can create the inversion of that. Yeah, we got him. Take out one of ours. We can't go on. I can't go on. I'm not worth life. That's survivor's guilt, right? The depressed, stuck in painful emotion, withdrawing from the world. I can't handle it anymore. Right? Shut down the creative expression to protect himself behind an armor of indifference. His apathy cuts him off from the joys of life. He feels separated and isolated. His libido is low. So that comes with an inability to enjoy your life. Now, the active form is the addict. The passive is the depressed. Some of the results of these are cultural destruction of the lover. Starts young in our society. A lot of times it starts with an unhealthy relationship with the mother, which makes it difficult for a boy to feel connected to the divine mother, and then affects his relationships with women, nature. You can find a lot of this in hyper-masculine environments. And I'm not going to get into this right now, but when you look at the top search porn terms over time, you find that there's a lot of really depressed and addicted people that are seeking out hyper masculinity exemplified, which is why 1 in 3 women don't get through their childhood without being sexually assaulted, and why we have such an epidemic, pandemic, whatever here of sex slavery, et cetera, and so forth. It's because we are not in touch with our lover. Seeking out hyper masculine environments. Depression from failure to connect to the divine feminine, and or a lack of male role models. So not having a healthy relationship with a mother, not having anyone in your life that can guide and cultivate you as a young man. And when you look at a fatherless generation, you can see a lot of this being exemplified in our culture, okay? It ultimately creates a situation where you feel cut off from yourself. Now, both Aries and Athena are gods of war, but Aries thrives on in addiction. He thrives in the sadist and the masochist. Okay, that's Aries. The sadist and the masochist. I enjoy pain. I'm not worthy of this. It's like a perpetual war. Versus Athena, who is also a god of war, who ultimately craves peace. The lover in business, a lot of us find that we fall victim to this right here. We lose heart in our business. Our heart becomes disconnected from our business. A lover must fall in love with what they do, why they do it, and who they do it with. They're ultimately helping themselves in others because everything is connected. They are passionate. They are ultimately comfortable in joy and in pain. Service without connection. They serve people without having a connection to the financial outcome. I'm just doing this because I want to help people buy a house. I hope I get paid. And a lot of times the ultimate goal is they get paid. The day is not something to be sacrificed. It is about the journey for the lover. It is about being. They make great buyer's agents, operations managers, team leads, people that run themselves with a good center with their heart, make great kings. They make great magicians. You want to be able to consult that lover in all of your different areas. Now, the magician in the shadows. The magician in an active bipolar shadow is manipulative. Using the things that it's like the guy in the book of Eli, seeking out the Bible because he understands that he can control people with it, right? Versus the denying innocent one. Who, me? I've never done it. They're constantly doing things to be little puppet masters. Ours is, we believe, the age of the magician because it is a technological age. It is an age of the magician, at least in his materialistic concern, with understanding and having power over nature. But in terms of non-materialistic, psychological, or spiritual initiatory process, the magician energy seems to be in short supply. We no longer have sacred rituals, right? Sacred rites. And it's why, and we'll get into this here in a moment, you can see that we're great at creating warriors, but not bringing them back home. The full magician is, I know this to be true. I know it. Versus, I already know. Do you know how much I know? You know what I mean? Or I don't know anything. I don't know anything about anything. I'm just clueless. I'm a passive, clueless person. And either one of those can get you stung. So the magician in their fool is wise. They're intuitive. They understand that everything is about perception. It's perfect the way it is. I am successful. I'm successful right now. In fact, you're successful, you just don't even know it yet. You're successful, you just don't even know it yet. Right? It is about what is happening here. Okay? Manifestation, law of attraction. They're about getting right here, and then understanding that that ultimately will affect their surroundings. The highest form of warfare is attacking war itself, right? We talked about that last week. They're faith-based. They're less about the physical and more about the metaphysical. Less about things and more about, people, spirits, right? Meditation or prayer is central in a centered magician's life. They don't tend to make things about life and death that are not about life and death. And they're often humorous. The magician is great at checking our egos and helping us to establish or reestablish our connection with ourselves or with God. Rites, rituals, and initiations are something that we don't have very much of these days, which is why people seek out things like boot camp. Oh, I killed an elk, or oh, I killed an elephant, or whatever. I killed something. It's like that sort of rites of passage with initiation. You could have that in warrior ethos, but it's always presided over by a wise woman, a wise man, a senior, right? It's not just a bunch of people going out into the woods and then not learning anything from what they're doing. We succeed in turning men into warriors, but often fail in bringing them back home. Magicians do not try to force social change because they recognize that people need to take their journeys in order to be able to live in a human and peaceful world. If you're constantly trying to control everything, give people the answers without them taking the journeys, it's not going to create the experience that they need. Truly liminal space, truly transformative space, truly sacred space in the sense that tribal people used it for personal transformations always has ritual leaders. That's why a lot of us feel spiritual or feel, like we have a connection to God, but we feel like we're one step removed from, right? Oh, well, I don't really know God. God isn't. Is God in you? Okay, all of God or part of God? Okay, can you divide God up into small, little, tiny pieces? Okay, so all of God is in you. You know what I mean? So understanding that and then removing and becoming an authority gives one to step into that magician space, right? So there's the profane space. The profane space is this. It's the world. It is a place without center, right? It is a place of moving things, moving people, moving bodies, moving minds. But sacred space is a place with center. It is getting centered. It is connecting to God from within, right? The great magician is great at deconstructing your ego, bringing you down a notch, keeping you not deflated, but properly where you should be. Versus the trickster, the shadow archetype, wants to inflate the ego. Try to, get you to do what they want you to do. Okay? Oh, there you go. So the magician in their shadow is the manipulator. Okay? As an active role. Manipulating their situations, manipulating people around them, seeking to control. The passive version is the innocent one. Oh, I don't know. I don't know anything about anything. The shadows of the magician. I know. The manipulator acts selfishly and wants to increase his power to control others. His mind is cut off from his heart. To get what he wants, he uses lies and false information. His fear creates a desire to keep others small and disempowered. The denier, the innocent one, the weakling. The denier pretends not to know. He finds excuses and wants to be seen as innocent. He denies his power, knowledge, and responsibility. He uses this strategy to camouflage his jealousy and unintegrated hidden desires. So the active, the manipulator, the passive, the denier. The shadow magician is a trickster. They crave chaos without offering a viable alternative. Think the Joker in The Dark Knight. right? We want to destroy order without seeking to create a better form of whatever, right? A better form of love. They seek out, again, to manipulate people. They're easy to be manipulated. The magician in business does more with less. They understand that time is fluid, it is an asset, and it does not always need to be used, right? They crave isolation, insulation versus, why are you isolating? I'm not isolating, I'm insulating. I'm making room for that sacred space. Going into the woods but not staying there. That's where a lot of people get lost. Okay, by creating the perfect website, the perfect lead generation system. Where have you been? Oh, I've been creating my branding and creating the perfect slogan and creating this and creating that and the perfect website. And then that way when people call me, they just want to work with me and I don't have to do any actual work at all. All I have to do is write a contract, but hopefully somebody can do that for me too, right? And so like that's sort of like, the going into the woods but not staying there. I went to the woods and I stayed there, right? So Jesus went to the woods for 40 days, right? I'm not Jesus, so I went to the woods for like 2 years. I was like, I'm not totally sure I want to come out of the woods, right? So that's part of where you see people spinning. You can't think your way out of insanity. You need a magician, a mentor, a sage. You need the divine wisdom. You need the surrender that goes along with that to honor that flow. Now, what I think is really interesting in the business world, and in fact, in one of the videos that I watched, you see a lot of people talking about taking ayahuasca. You know what? I traveled out this place and I took ayahuasca, and now I'm just totally healed, and I don't even wear denim anymore. You know what I mean? So like going to like that ritual, it's like we take these things to an extreme, right? We take and then now you need it. Now it's like, oh well, every 10 years I go out and I take ayahuasca because I just need to get recentered. Instead of understanding that our tools are within us, things that we are going to benefit are coming from within. Microdosing LSD, right? So you hear a lot of that, oh man, I've been microdosing shrooms, I microdose LSD, it puts me in a really creative place, I've been doing it for like 3 months, you know what I mean? And you'll hear a lot of like influential business people talking like this. These people make great mentors, great coaches, great friends, authors, speakers, but understanding that you need to look at the magician and then consider the body, right? Consider where it's coming from, consider the source, and then decide whether or not you want to implement so you don't fall victim to the trickster. Now, here's a quick quiz to recap. Of the disc, Myers-Briggs, or our King Warrior Magician Lover Energy, which is the best utilized for hiring? Disc, correct. Now, which is the best used for a personal blueprint? Myers-Briggs, good job. Now, which will help you unlock your fullest potential? King Warrior Magician Lover. Look at you guys. Any questions from anybody?
So good. No, but that's great. Great job.
I put two of my favorite ENTPs right at the end. Right here. Any questions from anyone? Okay, cool. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, very good, thank you.